So hello everybody, and I'm delighted to be here with you today to spotlight a report I've just published last week called Local People Leading, the Role of Women in the Birth of Scotland's Community-Based Housing Associations. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but it is a really good read. So this is a project I wanted to do for such a long time, as Colleen alluded to there. And the whole idea of community ownership of social housing is what made me want to become a housing researcher in the first place, back in the day when I was a student. But despite all the great research that's written on this topic, and a lot of it has been done by other people in the room, I think the question I've always wondered or kind of posed to myself is where is the women? Where are the women in this story? And just reflecting on some of the comments and the presentations from earlier in the day, I think many of us in the room will be familiar with, for example, Mary Barber and her contribution to the Glasgow rent strikes. But why don't we know the story of the women who set up Glasgow's CBHAs in the same way? Why are their stories not in our popular imagination? Because their contribution to Scotland's housing history and where we are today is no less important. So that was really the motivation for this project and what finally got us started with it. So I've only got a couple of slides here, and the first on the slide is a quote here from a brilliant book by Sean Damer. And one of the reasons I love this book is it really captures how in Glasgow's working class communities, women were the social glue that held it all together. And they played a really key role in tenement life. And I think this is also captured quite nicely in the photo alongside it, which Linthouse Housing Association kindly shared with me, and it's of their first management committee in 1975. And I think this photo really, it just captures the spirit of what the whole project is about and really drives home, I think, that key role that women played as early pioneers and early leaders of CBHAs. So I love this photo so much, so thank you again to Linthouse for sharing it with us. Now, I've only got 5 minutes with you, so in that brief time, I just want to spotlight the report's key findings and to encourage you to read the report and deep dive into it a little bit more. So just to tease out some of the key themes, the first one is the way in which urban decline and stigma were catalysts for local action. I think even back then in the early days, people recognised how investment in housing could transform people and places, and it did. And I think if you go back to some of those communities there that Raymond showed and looked at them now, they would look remarkably different. And that's down to the people in those communities driving forward that change. I think secondly, CBHAs are a brilliant example of localism in action, and you'll struggle to find a better one in the UK context, I think. Local people set up these new organisations, they brought local knowledge, they brought a kind of tenacity to deliver real change. And that wasn't an easy task. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of learning new skills, and they were also very visible in their communities. But at that time, they also enjoyed a very generous funding regime and also a lot of support and a really nurturing relationship from the Housing Corporation. And this was really important to helping get these new organisations off the ground. Now, one of the other things people often talked about in that early period when I was interviewing them was how it felt like a movement back then. And there was a real sense of kind of camaraderie and lots of networking and socialising and events and people getting together. And that all made people have a sense that things could be different, they could transform things. There was a real kind of hunger for change and a lot of optimism and a desire to do things differently. And I think one of the other interesting themes that came out of the research, and one maybe we don't talk about enough, is how volunteering in housing offered a lot of opportunities for ordinary people that might not otherwise have been open to them. People gained qualifications, they went to college and university, they got the opportunity to travel across the UK and overseas. Being involved in housing allowed them to build their confidence, build their skills, and for some they even took forward careers in housing themselves. So I think that's kind of perhaps an undervalued benefit of that time that maybe we need to have a bit more of a focus on. Now, if we look back at the 70s and 80s, it was a very different time and gender roles were a lot more traditional. And it's probably no surprise then that people often talk to me about gendered barriers that they face, especially around childcare, but also sometimes dismissive attitudes. But more positively, I think, women also told me about how their organisations, their CBHAs, really supported them to overcome these challenges so that they could juggle their different roles and succeed in their volunteering as board members. And it probably comes as no surprise if I say to you I spent a lot of time talking to women about legacy and all that CBHAs had achieved over the last 50 years and all their special memories that they were most proud of from their careers. And most CBHAs now, they've went beyond their original remit. You know, they've improved the local housing a long time ago, and they're now getting involved in a lot of different things locally. For example, new build developments, saving local historical buildings through development trusts, and building a whole range of community facilities, assets and green spaces, all for the use and the benefit of other local people. And I think one of the reasons I've long been interested in CBHAs is, for me, they're a really brilliant example of community anchor organisations, and they go well beyond delivering the bricks and mortar. And I think for me, it's these community links, these relationships that are fundamental to the whole ethos of what CBHAs are all about. And I think that's one of the reasons the model has survived and thrived for as long as it has. So last one, thinking to the future, I think, just echoing some of the other comments that have been made, I think there's lots of lessons we can learn from the past, and the report goes into this in a lot more detail. But I think one of the things I would stress as one of the take-home messages is that in a time of crisis, we really need public investment in social housing. CBHAs have delivered so much in the last 50 years, and with targeted support, they could do even more. But I think beyond the kind of recommendations that are in the report, I think the research is also a real testament to people power and the value of communities doing things for themselves. And I'm really glad we've been able to all come together today to kind of recognise and celebrate that, because it is quite special. So last slide, if you're interested in reading a little bit more and having a look at the report, there's a QR code here that you can scan with your smartphone and you can view and download the report. Or you could also contact either myself or the Forum Direct and they can email it to you if that's easier. And I just wanted to say a couple of quick thanks before I wrap up. Firstly, thank you to all the women who took part in the project for being so generous with their time and their memories of this period. To the forum, David and Colleen, for all your support and encouragement. And finally, to the ISPA project and my colleague Vicky McCall at the table over there. This project supported this case study and allowed the research to happen. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. So I just want to say special thanks to Vicky for encouraging me along. Over to you.